Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to VJ's World. Now I'm going to read the story Sleeping Beauty. A long time ago, there were a king and queen who said every day, "Ah, if only we had a child," but they never had one. A long time after, the queen had a little girl who was so pretty that the king could not contain himself for joy and ordered a great feast. There were 13 of them in his kingdom, but as he had only 12 golden plates for them to eat out of, one of them had to be left at home. The feast was held with all manner of splendor. When it came to an end, the wise women bestowed their magic gifts upon the baby. When 11 of them had made their promises, suddenly the 13th came in. She cried with a loud voice, "The king's daughter shall in her 15-year prick herself with a spindle and fall down dead." And without saying a word more, she turned round and left the room. The 12th, whose good wish still remained unspoken, came forward and said, "It shall not be death, but a deep sleep of 100 years, into which the princess shall fall." The king, who would fain keep his dear child from misfortune, gave orders that every spindle in the whole kingdom should be burned. Meanwhile, the gifts of the wise women were plenteously fulfilled on the young girl, for she was so beautiful, modest, good natured, and wise that everyone who saw her was bound to love her. It happened that on the very day when she was 15 years old, the king and the queen were not at home. She climbed up the narrow, winding staircase and reached a little door. There, in a little room, sat an old woman with a spindle, busily spinning her flax. She took the spindle and wanted to spin too, but scarcely had she touched the spindle when the magic decree was fulfilled, and she pricked her finger with it, and in the very moment when she felt the prick, she fell down upon the bed that stood there and lay in a deep sleep. And this sleep extended over the whole palace. The king and queen, who had just come home and had entered the great hall, began to go to sleep, and the whole of the court with them. He had forgotten something. Let him go and went to sleep. And the wind fell, and on the trees before the castle not a leaf moved again. But round about the castle there began to grow a hedge of thorns, which every year became higher. After long, long years, a king's son came again to that country and heard an old man talking about the thorn hedge. The good old man might dissuade him as he would. He did not listen to his words. He entered the castle. This time the 100 years had just passed, and the day had come when Briar Rose was to awake again. He went on farther, and in the great hall he saw the whole of the court lying asleep, and up the throne lay the king and queen. At last he came to the tower, opened the door into the little room where Briar Rose was sleeping. There she lay, so beautiful that he could not turn his eyes away, and he stooped down and gave her a kiss. But as soon as he kissed her, Briar Rose opened her eyes and awoke and looked at him quite sweetly. Then they went down together, and the king awoke, and the queen and the whole court, and looked at each other in great astonishment. And then the marriage of the king's son with Briar Rose was celebrated with all splendor, and they lived contented to the end of their days. Here is one more interesting story, and its name is Little Mermaid. Long, long ago, in the deep sea kingdom, there lived the sea king with his 5 mermaid daughters. Serenita was the youngest and the loveliest among them. She had a beautiful voice, and everybody from far and wide came to hear her sing and praised her voice and her beauty. One day, while Serenita was swimming on the surface of the water and watching ships go by, she saw a young man falling off his ship. She swam swiftly to save him from drowning and dragged him to the shore. Soon, people found the man on the shore, and Serenita swam away. This man was actually the prince of a kingdom. When he became conscious, the prince looked around for the girl who saved him, but no one knew who she was. Serenita often thought of the young man and fell in love with the prince. But she was sad because she could never be like all the other ladies he knew. They had 2 feet and she had a fish tail. In the deep sea lived a witch with magical powers. One day Serenita went to beg her for human legs. The witch said, "I need your beautiful voice. Only then I shall give you legs. But you must remember, every time you set your feet on the ground, it will hurt very badly." Serenita agreed. She did not mind the pain. All she wanted was to be with the prince. As soon as she got her 2 feet, Serenita became dumb. When she was leaving, the witch said, "If your prince marries anybody else, you shall dissolve in the sea water. You can never become a mermaid again." With the witch's magical spell, Serenita found herself lying on the beach and the prince looking down at her. He asked, "Where are you from?" But she could not reply. The prince took her to his palace and looked after her. They became good friends and had a wonderful time together. Every step Serenita took hurt, but she bore it all silently. She loved the prince, but the prince was in love with the beautiful maiden who had saved him. The prince did not realize it had been Serenita and she couldn't tell him. Obeying the wishes of his father, the prince went to meet the daughter of a neighboring king. Enchanted by her beauty, the prince was convinced this was the same maiden who rescued him. He asked the princess to marry him. She ran to the seashore. There she saw 4 mermaids. Why, they were her sisters. One of, one of them handed her a knife and said, "Here, Serenita, this is a magic knife." We gave our long hair locks to the witch of the deep sea, and she gave this to us in return. "Kill your prince, and you shall turn into a mermaid again. Then you can come and live with us." Serenita took the magic knife and went to the prince's room at night. A grand wedding took place. Serenita was heartbroken that night, crying, but she loved him so much that she could not kill him. She knew that at dawn she would vanish into the sea, just as the witch of the deep sea had told her earlier. She sat on the shore and wept silently. Suddenly from the sky came a pink cloud. It lifted her from the land into the sky. "Where am I?" asked Serenita. For now she could talk. The beautiful fairies replied, "We are the air fairies. You are now one of us because you did a good deed for the person you love. Come with us." From then on, the little mermaid Serenita lived in the sky with the fairies. Here we have next story, Goldilocks and the 3 Bears. There once lived a little girl who was called Goldilocks because her hair shone like gold. One day she walked and walked and was soon a longer way from home than she had ever been before. In fact, she was lost. On and on she wandered. Finally, in a particularly lonely spot, She happened onto a neat little house. It was really the house in which lived the three bears. But of course, Goldilocks didn't know that. The little girl went up to the door and knocked. There was no answer, and so she opened the door and went in. She was very tired and hungry. Goldilocks looked around and saw a little table set with a nice white cloth, and on the table there were three bowls, a big blue bowl, a middle sized bowl, and a little yellow bowl. Goldilocks lifted up the covers to look into the bowls. Each was full of delicious smelling porridge which the three bears had left there to cool while they went for their early morning walk in the woods. Goldilocks picked up the spoon which was in the big blue bowl and tasted the porridge belonging to the papa bear. It was very hot, much too hot for the little girl to eat. After having eaten, Goldilocks wandered into the living room to sit down. There, along the wall, stood three chairs, a big chair, a middle sized chair, and a little chair. And so Goldilocks sat down in the baby bear's chair. It was just right, and she sat so hard that she broke it. She immediately picked herself up and decided she would go upstairs and look around. She was quite sleepy by now, and maybe she could find a nice bed upon which to lie down. Then Goldilocks climbed the stairs to the bedroom and there found three beds, one for the papa bear, one for the mama bear, and one for the baby bear. They were all fresh and clean. Goldilocks lay down on Papa Bear's great big bed, but it was too hard. Then she tried Mama's Bear's middle sized bed, but it was too much soft. There was still a third bed, Baby Bear's bed with pink and white spread on it. Goldilocks tried the littlest bed and it was just right, and so she curled up and was soon fast asleep. Now, while Goldilocks was sleeping, the bears came home from their walk. They were very hungry and went at once to the kitchen to eat their porridge. The papa bear had picked up his spoon and was about to begin eating when he suddenly growled in his big bear voice, "Somebody has been tasting my porridge." When the mama bear saw her bowl, she said in her middle sized bear voice, "And somebody has been tasting my porridge too." Baby bear saw his empty bowl and began to cry. "Somebody has been tasting my porridge and has eaten it every bit," he wailed. Then the three bears went into the living room to sit down and rest. Baby bear began crying harder than before. "Somebody has been sitting in my chair and has broken it all to pieces," he sobbed. Baby bear had no chair to sit on, and so the three bears decided they would go upstairs to rest. They would take a short nap. All this time, Baby Bear had been staring hard at his own little bed. Finally, he found his voice and piped up, "Somebody has been tumbling in my bed, and there she is." At the sound of the baby bear's voice, the little girl awoke with a start. She sat up and glanced about her. Then she sprang out of bed and dashed down the stairs and out of the house as fast as her legs would carry her. She ran forgetful of all the trouble she had so unkindly caused. But Baby Bear called from the doorway, waving his arm. "Don't run away. Come back. I forgive you. Come and play with me." And this is how it all ended. From that day onwards, haughty, rude Goldilocks became a pleasant little girl. She made friends with Baby Bear and often went to his house. She invited him to her house too, and they remained good friends always.